Welcome back to the official Lost podcast. In this installment, executive producers Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse discuss the long-awaited Sawyer episode entitled The Long Con, which airs this Wednesday, February 8th from 9 to 10 p.m. Eastern. First, though, we present a special interview with Evangeline Lilly, who plays the alluring and enduring Kate. For Evangeline Lilly, Lost represents her breakout part. Discovered during casting in Canada, the role literally changed her life. But, as we discovered, you can take the girl out of Canada, but the accent never goes away. Eh?
I was just trying to help, Jack. All right, when you told me not to go, I made a mistake. Hey, could you just talk to me for a second? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm sorry, too.
Oh my goodness, the first audition that I did was up in Vancouver, and I put myself on tape. And that tape then was sent to Los Angeles. And it's terrible to say, but I was auditioning for pilot season at the time, and it was probably my 25th-ish, somewhere around there, audition. And when I got the call from my agent saying they want to fly you to L.A., and they want to do a reading with the producers and the studio and the network, which is basically skipping all callbacks, skipping every process that you're supposed to go through in an audition process, and just going right to the very end. I was flabbergasted because I had left the audition room, putting myself on tape, and I had said to the casting director at the time, I can't for the life of me figure this character out. I can't nail her. I can't get her down. And she said, well, why don't you try this? And we tried a bunch of things together, and both of us eventually threw our hands in the air and went, who knows? And it just was the only time I'd ever left an audition room not thinking, man, I nailed it. The only time that I walked away and thought, never in a million years would I hear from those people. And then it turned out that was the one I got. I was in my apartment in the small town I lived in near Vancouver, and I never get excited. I'm the most unexcitable person, and it really actually kind of tragic because my father and my sisters are very excitable, and they get really amped up over things. And I tend to stay pretty cool and mellow and don't really get very excited, but I was bouncing off of the walls. I was jumping up and down on my bed and like running around my apartment, practically screaming, not quite, but just giddy. And I couldn't believe how excited I was over it, because at that point I was still saying to myself, I may not like this, I may not want to do this as a career, but just the prospect of it maybe potentially working out, of it maybe becoming what it actually is today, was really exciting.
Evangeline has since settled into her job, but that doesn't mean she's not facing new challenges. One of those, for her, is blocking the following scene from collision.
Sawyer. It's Kate. You need to listen to me, okay? The only way that you are going to get better is if you take this pill. So I need you to swallow it, okay?
Man, that was the hardest part of that scene, was blocking that scene. Trying to get the three of us into basically a child-sized bunk bed on the bottom half of the bunk bed, plus camera equipment, plus lighting, was interesting. And in the end, what happened was we started out where Matthew Fox sits down beside Josh, and then I come in and he says, hold him up. And I sat on top of Josh, straddling him, and lifted him front ways towards me. And I really felt like it was starting to look like a pornographic threesome. It was terrible. And I just thought, this doesn't work. Somehow the intimacy and the sweetness of the scene and all of the beautiful dynamics that are going on are completely negated by the fact that I'm straddling Sawyer. So we ended up finding another way, and I was able to crawl in behind him, which ended up being much more realistic. But it's amazing how you can be in these scenes and you're blocking them and you're trying to work out the physicality of them, and for some reason what would naturally occur doesn't come to you. You know, you don't naturally think, oh, I would climb behind him and I would support him that way. But I'm pretty positive in a regular situation, were a doctor to say, you know, prop this person up, that's probably what I would do. So in the end, I think it worked out. But yeah, there was, it was a struggle to get there.
Of course, the key question is, where does she think the Jack Sawyer love triangle is headed?
I don't want to tell because I'm afraid I'll be right. I feel like the actors, though, we don't know the answers. You know, we are in the heartbeat and the pulse of this show. I mean, we're living and breathing it every day. So I think the writers are so intuitive and so good at what they do that as a human, you can instinctually feel where things are heading. So I don't really want to say where I think it might be going, but, you know, I will say that there is a very significant twist in that plot coming up very soon in Sawyer's flashback episode, which I think should be absolutely fantastic. The director's doing an amazing job, and Josh Holloway is just, you know, he's just shining. I think that of the people who I started working with, he's one of the people I've been the most impressed with how greatly he's grown and learnt and just been absolutely stunning everyone with his performances.
Pressed further, this is all we could get out of her.
I think if you expect Kate to make a definitive decision this season, you're wishing for something that may not come about. I don't see Kate making decisions that are definitive about love anytime in the near future, which I am so grateful for, because Kate, in if you look at her life and her flashback, she spent so many years running from people and being definitive about only one thing, and that's herself, that to turn around and just decide to commit to a man she's known for, 60 days, it would be completely unrealistic, I think.
Well, that's all the time we have with Evangeline for now. Join us next podcast as we continue the conversation and discover that she used to be, and still is, somewhat of a cigar aficionado. Now, though, it's time for the DC Radio Hour as we turn it over to our hosts, Damon and Carlton, to discuss The Long Con.
Hello and welcome to another Delightful Lost podcast. I'm Carlton Hughes.
So excited about this. I am Damon Lindelof.
Hello, Damon.
I feel like we should say, and we are, and then come up with some kind of...
And we are the producers of Lost.
Yes, exciting.
So I guess we're going to start today with a little rehash about Fire Plus Water. Would you like to talk a little bit about what happened in last week's story, Damon?
Yes, I think we had a rerun there. Sorry about that, guys, but we make the show as fast as we can. But just to sort of catch you up, in this episode we basically saw Charlie struggling again with his heroin addiction, and ultimately he is sort of plagued by these rather vivid and intense dreams that he believes, after talking to Mr. Echo, are telling him that he needs to baptize Aaron, Claire's baby, and he takes a sort of very, conclusive and decisive action in doing such. And in the end of the story, Aaron is baptized, but at great sort of personal loss to Charlie. And more importantly, Locke has sort of emerged as a protector of the baby, and we see something in Locke that we have not seen for a very long time, and to some degree have not seen at all, which is that he has a little bit of a temper flare-up and
capable of a little violence.
Capable of a little violence there. So I'm kind of curious what that's all about, because it seemed very un-Lockean to me.
Well, I think that Locke is experiencing a certain amount of frustration in his existence, being down in the hatch and pushing those buttons, and not feeling that the island is giving him maybe enough of a sign in terms of what he needs to do, and he has sort of become the prisoner of the thing that he thought was going to liberate him, perhaps.
And he's going to take that out on Charlie?
Well,
it's not his fault.
And he's there is a developing interest with Claire, and I think that he is feeling very protective of the baby and Claire, and maybe it is. Maybe there's something important to learn in the fact that Locke seemed to be capable of violence. I mean, we saw him in an anger management group, didn't we?
We did.
Yes.
Obviously, it was not as effective as one would hope.
Apparently not.
There were a couple little Easter eggs that we hit in that episode. I think we sort of teased the audience in a previous podcast that there'd be some signage on the building in the scene following the diaper commercial.
Those of you who are, avid Pink Floyd fans might recognize that building across the other side of the Thames River there.
We took out the floating pig, though, because that would have been a little obvious.
Yeah, well, we try to be subtle.
Yeah.
But there is, if you stop, and I don't even know whether you can see it, but there is supposed to be a little sign there on the back of the building, which ended up sort of turning out much smaller than we had anticipated in the final cut, that says Widmore Construction on it.
Yeah, that would be WIDMORE, which is seemingly fairly innocuous, but, I would write it down for those of you who are assembling clues.
Exactly. So that's something that, you'll hear more about Widmore, the Widmore Company, and in the future. Don't you think?
Is that the same as the Hanso Foundation or the Dharma Initiative? Or
it's not the same as the Hanso Foundation.
I'm intrigued.
It could be related to the Hanso Foundation.
I've never been so emotionally wrapped up in construction before now. So,
but that was that Easter egg was embedded a little bit deeply. Those of you also who watched the show in HD might have noticed a little piece of Easter egg action with the drug plane sort of going down over the treetops, but that was only visible in the HD version of the show. So.
Right, in Charlie's second dream, when he sees Claire and his mother there on the beach, and right before the dove appears, you'll be able to see it on your DVDs as well, in season 2 DVDs. But unfortunately, we do not broadcast the show widescreen as many television shows do, and that's an ongoing conversation between.
Not between us.
Us and the powers that be. No, we are pretty much signed off
between the two of us, we would like to broadcast the show in widescreen, but that's just not going to happen yet.
So, moving on, this week's episode is entitled "The Long Con." Now, whose flashbacks are this episode going to feature?
Well,
can I guess?
Can you, Damon, take a guess?
I'm gonna go with Son.
No, I think the word con is a clue here for you.
Kate, because she's a con. She's a fugitive. She's a convict.
Oh my God! No.
She's sort of long. I mean, if she's not short.
She's not short. No.
Could it be Sawyer?
It could be Sawyer. Yes,
Excellent.
Very good.
I've been very hungry for another Sawyer flash. I can't believe that we've gone 13 episodes into the season, and and we have not done a Sawyer flashback yet. So that should be fairly exciting.
It is a shame. We are actually very excited about this. I mean, we love Josh Holloway to death, and the expression.
You sleep with a picture of him under your pillow, don't you, Carlton?
I sleep with 2 pictures of him under my pillow. Actually, I wish I could quit him. Actually,
yeah, I wish you could quit him too.
Do you think that but basically America in general, how long is it going to take before people get tired of Brokeback Mountain jokes? I mean, do you think it'll just become just a permanent part of the lexicon? I mean,
I think it's sort of. I got tired of it about 3 weeks ago, and now I'm into it again. So it's sort of like, it's sort of like American Idol. It's like it's when the auditions are on, you go yeah, and then you kind of wane while they narrow it down to about 6, and then you get into it again. So there's something about cowboys who love each other that is so timeless. It's Carlton, seriously, take your hand off my knee. This is the podcast. We've talked about this before.
Well, then take the cowboy hat off, and maybe I will.
All right. I wish I could quit this cowboy hat.
So anyway, the long con as opposed to short con. Long con is a terminology that refers in the sort of con profession to really setting someone up to bring them down in a very intricate long-term fashion, as opposed to just a short con.
So one of the things we've been sort of accused of in writing the show Lost, I believe, is the long con.
We have been accused of long con.
But hopefully, when history reveals that the ending of the show, it will not be revealed to be such. But one thing that I'd sort of like to just sort of point out for the viewers tonight is, one of the things that the fans of the show really love, and is not something that we do as Easter eggs, but is sort of a part of the larger mythology of Lost and what everything means and what's going on, is that we have crosses in flashbacks, and there's a very cool one in the long con.
We
think that that instead of sometimes it's sort of twice removed, and sometimes it's a little more direct than others. But we think that this one is fairly. This is kind of a cool one. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
Yeah, that'll be good. And I think otherwise it's a very enjoyable episode.
Yeah,
it speaks for itself.
Yeah, to tell you anything more, it would be to ruin the fun.
Exactly. I think, for those of you who, as we said before, we're sort of running through some of our favorite characters from last season in these episodes, and in some ways we are sort of revisiting certain qualities that these characters had that sort of made them, and defined them in the first season of the show, and that's a little bit about what's going on with Sawyer in this episode.
Sawyer's gotten a little soft this year.
I think he has,
yeah. It's time to give him, toughen him back up a bit, I think.
Exactly. So anyway, we hope you enjoy the show, and we'll be talking about it more after you've seen it next week. So let's get to my favorite part of this, Damon, which is, as always, questions
from fans.
Okay, Damon. Piggy's got the conch.
Uh-oh.
Piggy's got the conch.
That's a Lord of the Flies reference there, I would assume.
I think that is. Damon, if you were on the island, which lost character would you be most like?
Which character would I be most like?
And don't just say Claire again, okay? Because that's just getting old.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of tired. I guess what's interesting is I sort of, at any given time, I sort of shift depending on what's going on in my life. But the character that the two characters that I tend to identify with most are sort of Jack and Locke. And I know those aren't the most exciting off the point issues, but I love Jack because he's in such a tough spot, and he so sensitively responds to everything. And the whole idea of being in an environment where people are looking at you to make hard decisions, but every time you seem to make one, they challenge you on it, is something that I think we all deal with in every day of our lives. And what I love about Locke is, and Carlton and I talk about this a lot, is Locke is looking for it more. He believes there's more to life, but he doesn't know exactly what that is, and the search is very frustrating. And I think that is something that I really key into too, because I have faith. I just don't know what my faith is in precisely. So those are my two guys. I now have a question for you, Carlton, on the.
I'm pretty sure I can't answer it.
On the mythological axis, I guess.
Oh,
This is from There's no R. It's basically philosopher without an R. 999. And in the third.
That'd be like a cool rap name, wouldn't it?
It would be.
Philosopher
999.
999.
And he's just like sort of standing on the cover with
That's going to be my next career. I'm going to be philosopher.
With a little pair of glasses. All right. I think that's a good idea. I would buy that album. In your third podcast, you spoke of laissez-faire. I'm aware of Adam Smith's biography, and that as a child, he was taken by gypsies. Ethan's last name, Rom, is also the singular form of Romany, I have recently found out, and I would like to know if there's going to be any connection between either Walt and Adam Smith, or Aaron and Adam Smith. Adam Smith, of course, the economist.
Wow. How did that person figure it out?
It's shocking when people figure this stuff out.
Adam Smith is actually responsible for the kidnapping of Walt, and in fact, he has been in a time warp on the other side of the island, and he is until this is like crazy.
Yeah.
No, there is no linkage between Romania, Adam Smith, and Walt, other than in your question.
And for those of you who say we never answer questions, take that.
That's
Carlton
an
is
answer.
getting out in front of that bad boy.
There is no connection. But it's a very good theory.
Why are you winking at me, Carlton? It's okay.
Because you put the cowboy hat back on.
All
That's
right,
why.
well, come on. I mean, you get a cowboy hat, and that's what you do with it. Put it on.
Is it just between us, Damon?
It is. Do you want to ask me another question now, Carlton?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Listen, Saeed is my hero would like to know, hey, I've been listening to these podcasts, and they are great. You guys talk a lot about working together and writing and creating the show, and I was wondering how basically you went from getting an idea for this TV show to writing episodes every week to be filmed.
Wow, that's sort of a broad question.
Can you just, one sentence maybe?
One sentence.
No, you can.
Very, very carefully. That's my answer. No, I mean, obviously, not to pimp the first season DVD, but there are a lot of great documentaries there as to sort of how the show was sort of creatively constructed. And every day, Carlton and I and an incredibly talented group of writers sort of sit in a big room and we talk about what that week's episode's going to be and sort of how it fits into the larger picture of the show. And we break a flashback story, and around that we figure out what's going on the island, and we try to it's like making a stew every week, just throwing in the right ingredients and bringing a little hope and a little suspense and something scary and a little bit of Saeed, obviously, because you love Saeed.
And if it's a stew, I would say you're Julia Child.
I am Julia Child. I'm going to take this hat off now because I put on an apron. So yeah, that's the sort of short answer to that question.
We actually don't really know how we do it. It's sort of by prayer and miracle that we actually manage to. We have a script. We write a script every 8 working days. So it's a lot like being in college and having a term paper hanging over your head all the time.
Carlton, I have 2 quick questions for you, and they are quick because they're sort of confirm or deny questions.
Confirm.
The first one is about Alex,
Deny.
The French Woman's Son by Slapshottered. If you remember back, Carlton, the French woman talked about her son, Alex, who was taken by the others. She tries to get him back, but can't. If you remember when Kate had a bag over her head and the others said to bring her out, when they were standing by the fire and Jack was asking where Michael was.
Yeah, I remember.
The weird guy said, Alex, bring her out. This means that Alex must be alive and working with these people. Any thoughts or comments?
Yes.
You have a thought or a comment?
Yes, I do.
I'm a little confused, though, about Alex being the French woman's son.
Now, Alex is not... I think we've made it clear that Alex is a female. Alex is a girl.
I believe in episode Exodus Part 1, actually. She says,
she
my
said
daughter,
my daughter.
Alex.
Yes, so Alex is a girl, and I think that it wouldn't be wrong to assume that if Mr. Friendly is shouting Alex, that would not be unrelated to this. How many negatives did I use in that sentence?
Who's Mr. Friendly?
Mr. Friendly is the guy with the beard, who some people call Zeke.
Oh, yeah, that's what Sawyer calls him. But his name isn't, it's not like that's on his driver's license. I mean, he's just referred to that because he's friendly.
Right.
I mean, we didn't name him
Exactly.
that.
That's good.
The other quick question that I have, just to clear this up because I'm a little confused about this, from Just Blaze 05. Hey, I don't know if someone else posted this, but it's not a joke and I am very sure. Watch episode Walkabout in Season 1 and episode Everybody Hates Hugo in Season 2. And in Locke's episode, his boss is talking with him. He tells him that he would not make sense if he does this walkabout trip because he's in a wheelchair. And the same boss you can see in Everybody Hates Hugo. There he works in a burger restaurant, and he is angry about Hurley because he ate all the burgers. So, do Locke and Hurley have the same boss?
That's a very good observation by
Just Blaze 05.
By Just Blaze 05. Well done. Randy is the same character in both flashbacks, and I mean, should we just go ahead and tell the audience that Hurley felt bad about Randy, and that and that he, after the meteor hit the chicken shack, he felt.
Oh yeah, that's right. It was a chicken shack and not a burger joint.
It was a chicken shack. Yeah, sorry, that was
Mr. Clux, as I
Mr.
recall.
Clux, and he felt bad about Randy. About the fact that his bad luck caused the chicken shack to get destroyed by the meteor. So he gave Randy a job working at this box company he owned in Tustin.
Well, that's right. We mentioned that Hurley actually was the owner of the box company in Tustin, and Locke mentioned that he worked at a box company in Tustin. So it's almost as if it all fits together.
It is.
But then again, you could be victims of the long con. See how we did that? Carlton, why are you in my lap right now? Seriously, it's uncomfortable. You're going to knock my hat off.
All right, Sam Fisher-Cell would like to know, Damon.
Yes.
In Season 2 thus far, what happened to the caves? I thought the whole reason for staying in the caves was for the good of the group. Limited numbers of entrances, water, etc. Now the tailies show up and tell everyone about the others, picking them off, and suddenly everybody decides a beach camp out is the best idea.
That's a very interesting and sort of that question makes a lot of sense. And basically the deal is, now that we have the hatch as sort of a protective shelter if necessary to bring everybody down into the caves, I think all the castaways feel fairly safe that if they needed to run and hide, that they would have a place to go that was even better protected than the caves.
Right.
And more importantly, just in terms of us as producers, the way that the show looks, we like to be outside as much as possible. So instead of alternating between the caves and the beach like we did in season 1, we feel alternating between the hatch and the beach made a lot more sense. And we also kind of think sociologically it's human nature for everybody to kind of live as close to each other as possible. So last year we had set up that some people were living at the beach and some people were living at the caves, and
Right.
the cave folk basically, leave the caves to go leave the beach because it's just nicer to have beachfront property.
Beachfront property. I mean, why would you not want to have an oceanfront?
At least until the monsoon comes,
that's true.
which
exactly.
Dr. Arts said was coming, but I don't know. He's kind of a moron. I think
Dr.
he
Arts
was
said a
wrong
lot
about
of
that.
things.
Yeah.
Monsoon season. Oops, blew myself up.
Yeah,
well, I
just-
guess we'll put a lot of faith in
Yeah,
that.
just because he was a physics teacher doesn't mean that he can predict the weather.
No, exactly. There was another part to this question, which I think you can clear up also, Damon. In Fire Plus Water, a lot of people have been arguing that the dove that appears is flanked by a twin black shadowed dove. I took this to be the dove's shadow, as the entire scene was supposed to mimic an old religious painting, and the dove was flying out of it and creating a shadow. Was it a shadow or was it a black dove?
Happy to say it was indeed a shadow, and obviously it's great that you picked up on that. I'm sorry, who asked this question?
This is still Sam Fisher-Sell.
Okay, Sam Fisher-Sell, because Carlton and I and Brian Burke, another executive producer on the show, work very closely with Kevin Blank and Martin, who do our visual effects, and basically we sit down with them and they come up with concepts, and we say, hey, for this we want this to look like the painting from the beginning of the show, and they basically pitch, when the dove appears, it would be great if it looked like it was actually flying out of the painting. And what we are going to do to create that effect is put the shadow on the painting surface so it two-dimensionalizes. And we said, that sounds really cool, do it. And obviously, it's a testament to their great work that you have extrapolated exactly what the intent was just by looking at that. So, yes, it's a black shadow and the dove is flying out of the dream painting. So I think that's all the time we have today for questions.
I think so.
I'm a little...
Time to ride off into the horizon, isn't
Wow.
it?
Yeehaw.
Giddy up, Damon.
All right, mount up, Carlton.
Hopefully we'll be back next week. If not, you'll know where we are.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you won't.
Up into
But we'll
the
be
sunset.
up in Brokeback Mountain.
Thanks for getting lost with us, and
We really appreciate it. Thanks for your good questions.
and we'll talk to you next week, I think.
Okay.
Where there's some really exciting things coming down the pipe that I can't wait to talk about.
There are indeed.
Thanks for joining us on the official Lost podcast. Next time, we rejoin Evangeline Lilly for part 2 of her exclusive interview. Get your own fan questions read on our podcast by submitting them at lost.abc.com. The Long Con airs Wednesday, February 8th from 9 to 10 p.m. only on ABC.